back to week 2 of your 90-day challenge in version 2. I'm here with Sanjiv Sidhu, and we are so excited to teach you about awareness, the first muscle of the methodology, and we're going to dive into the software or the app for you to have a supportive tool to actually quantify your awareness. So this week we'll be teaching you about the prototype, and we want to check in first about how you did last week.
Great, thank you, Kamala Devi. And thanks everyone for joining us again. Hope you enjoyed your homeworks. Actually, you've already started on awareness, right? That's what your homeworks were about. And let's just review. I want to quickly go through what I thought you should have gotten out of the homeworks. Again, if you didn't get some of these things out of doing the homeworks, then write to us on Facebook. We want to interact with you more and make sure that we're all moving as a community, moving towards forming version 2s of ourselves, moving towards being much more empowered despite circumstances. Okay? So just to review, we talked about how awareness is important. Last time we talked about one of the critical things about awareness is the ability to observe without really getting engaged. The moment you get engaged, the moment you try to problem solve, you're no longer an objective observer. So think about it this way. There are two personalities we have. One is the actor-reactor personality. Things happen, we're jumping in, we're reacting. That was Tom, right? Then we want to build another personality, which is generally called the witness consciousness. It's the time when you remove yourself from the actor personality and watch the actor. The more you watch the actor, the more you can actually direct the actor, not to react so much, to be more empowered despite circumstance. So I want you to think about the two exercises you did. One was you did the labeling exercise, and hopefully you're able to label much more, right? The belly rising, belly falling. So what I'd like you to get back to us is you did two exercises then. You did the labeling. Is just labeling helping you become more aware? And then you did the specific ripple exercise, which is you're diving deeper. And daily you took a look at how your ripple is compared to your circumstances. Now for me, just doing that helps. In future classes we're going to get to how to balance your ripple, right? But even if I don't do that, when I observe, I know where I am, and generally what I'm looking for myself, and hopefully you'll start looking for, is all ditches are not steep and automatic. You start going down the slippery slope. Let's say it's a 14-foot ditch. If you catch yourself 3 feet into it, it's so much easier to get out, right? That's what awareness does. That's what watching your ripple does. On a daily recap, you look at how you're reacting to your maybe unfair and unreasonable boss, and you say, you know, he or she is what they are. It's my ripple that I need to control. So before things really get worse, before you started shouting back at your boss, you figured you're going down the ditch and you start reacting to it. So we're going to discuss more tools for doing that today, and particularly we're going to move from doing what you were doing on paper to a computerized tool or the web app. When I think of the web app, it's something that I've been using and Kamala Devi has been using for a long time. I'll start by telling you my experience, then we'll take a look at what Kamala Devi, your experience was, and then we'll dive straight into the app. So for me, the analogy I always use is of a mirror. When I step out of my house, I typically stand in front of a mirror. You probably do, at least for a second, and see how I look. You know, I've often wanted a mirror for myself, not look at how I look on the exterior, but how I look internally. And so I always wanted a mirror, and I felt that it would be so useful for everyone to have a mirror where they're able to really look inside. And when we talk about look inside, it's always looking at the ripple, which is what desires are driving you? What are your emotions right now? How are you feeling? And are your feelings helpful or not? And are your behaviors in line with your intentions? Always the same. Sorry to keep repeating that. But I think if that's all you learn in the 90 days, I think it would benefit you a lot. It did for me. So what we'll show you is the mirror. And one neat thing about this mirror is, a mirror gives you the real-time status. You go to a mirror, it tells you how you look. But our mirror is where you can reflect on what yesterday was and what day before was. And the mirror actually stores all your previous images. So you can look at the previous images, you can search through them, and we'll take you through that. How about you, Kamala Devi? You've been using the app for quite some time.
It's profound. The shift for me is that I've been journaling and self-reflecting for, since I was 12 actually is how long I've been recording my thoughts, my feelings, but I didn't have the directed way of journaling as I do now with the Ripple, but more importantly, I didn't have the search capacities, the analytics, the way of looking at myself systematically. So right now, if you go to my home, I have a whole wall full of old journals, but they're useless, right? It's like I've got all this material that I created, but I can't sort it, and it doesn't tell me much about myself. But ever since I've been introduced to V2 Pal, I can now deeply record my BEED, and then when I have the time to reflect on myself, I can actually see patterns, which gives me the awareness to make changes. And I'm so excited to share it with people. It's really powerful.
Great. And I do get really excited about the tool. I sometimes wish I was with you, helping you work the tool, but we have this awesome video technology. Hopefully will take you through a very similar in-person experience. Otherwise, keep in mind the software is a prototype. It has some really rough edges right now, and we appreciate you beta testing not just the app but the methodology. And that's a point I want to make. For awareness, it's not just the app, it's the methodology. Your awareness builds by doing some of the exercises that we've been sharing with you and will continue to share with you that are off app and on app. And a little more about the app is that it is rough in certain cases, hasn't been tested with so many of you who will be getting on it. So do report bugs as and when they appear, and we'll hopefully be very responsive in fixing things and learning from you. So should we start?
Yeah, let's dive in.
You can log in, and I'm going to log in via Facebook, and then let's see what happens. And why don't you drive? That way I'll get to explain things more. And let's start by showing people what the end result is. So what happens is that I make episode entries just like you made episode entries in your homework, correct? And so let's look at the end result first, and then we'll go back and teach people how to make the episode entries. So click on awareness, and let's go to analytics.
Excellent.
Those of you who have the application, which is V2 Pal, and have entered and logged into that, you probably won't have much analytics. It takes about 2-3 weeks of use to develop, right? It's what I said, it's the mirror that gives you a real-time status, shows you how you look, but also shows you previously how you looked, and that's what analytics is about. So we're looking at analytics, and in analytics there are 3 things we want to focus on. There are many things you can get in analytics on, but 3 things of the Ripple that are really important, right? What were your behaviors? What emotions drove those behaviors, and what were the underlying desires? So let's go to behaviors. And this is open kimono. You get to see my behaviors as I've been recording my episodes for quite some time. So what the software is showing you there is the number of instances that I reported. For example, unmindful eating, it's 34. Distracted by social media is even more, 35. And times where, for example, I was not completing a task, switching from one task to another, which is also a disempowering behavior for me, is 12. Now what the software is reporting is frequency of reporting. It may or may not be the most disempowering behavior for me, but at least I'm getting a sense for what's coming up frequently. And as I'm trying to change and rewire myself, I'd like to be able to, for example, not grow one of those things, unmindful eating, as fast as it was otherwise growing. By the way, I did tell you guys that the software has bugs. Distracted by social media, I don't do that. It's really a bug in the software.
Yeah, I don't know anybody who's distracted by Facebook.
Yeah, or checking my phone often.
Right.
You don't do it either,
No,
right?
no.
Okay. And
actually, I want to celebrate how vulnerable it is for you to say, hey, these are the things that I have been tracking about myself that disempower me, and they're really self-selective, because as our users will see, is really whatever you choose to report on is what's going to show up in your word cloud.
Right. There's another option here. Kamala Devi, as she does it, she also puts her empowering behaviors. I haven't been doing that, but I learned that practice from her, and I think it's very powerful. And I encourage you, as you go and put your episodes, put both empowering and disempowering behaviors. I've just started that. That way it makes me feel good that I have so many empowering behaviors that I can track and feel good about. Okay? Let's go to emotions. So again, this is a tag cloud of my emotions, and again, it's a frequency report. You see anxiety there. You see frustrated by lack of progress. That's more important to me. The anxiety is not such a big deal, luckily for me, but I'm often frustrated by lack of progress because I'm very purpose driven, and I feel good when I am delivering or making progress on what my hill to climb usually is. And once in a while, when I get frustrated, it's not very helpful, in the sense that then I scramble, then I take shortcuts, then I'm not as creative. So this has been really useful. I look at it, and later when we do balances, you'll see how I can actually balance this behavior or start creating a version 2 of myself. But as I told you, the moment I see this, the moment I enter it, it's already helping me not go deeper in the ditch, because you have the intelligence, even without this training, to take corrective actions. It's really innate in all of us.
So
right?
like tattletelling on yourself so that you're held accountable. And the app holds you accountable. And I also see you've got grateful and peaceful in here.
Yeah.
And so the more grateful and peaceful you are, the more those grow.
Great. Yeah, so that's been recent where I'm starting to enter those. And for full disclosure, I feel actually quite grateful more often than 5 times, and I was just not entering those initially. So let's go look at desires. And this is kind of what desires drive me, because I'm entering them, and usually, as I said, in desires are not necessarily unhelpful, but once in a while they become unhelpful. We talked about it in the last class, and we'll talk about them often. And so the question I usually ask myself is, what am I feeling in terms of desires? I report against them. But I also ask another question. The other question is, how compelling is this desire? And am I driving this desire, or this desire driving me? The moment I find that the desire is driving me, that means I have a false sense of urgency about that desire, or I feel that if the desire is not met, my life will be not as good, which I believe is an illusion. It's just my belief system that drives me to that conclusion. Then I take corrective actions. Okay. Now, so that is my ripple. You can see the ripple that you were building, and how the ripple is building, and how I can get analytics about it. So I had desires, emotions, and behaviors. So now I'll like to show you the connection between them. Maybe we can go back to behaviors. And let's pick a behavior, unmindful eating. And what I'm now trying to find is the connection between the behavior, that was the end of the ripple. It was the outwardmost expression of the ripple, right? Finally, I have desires and then I take actions. This is where my behavior was unmindful eating, and I want to know what emotions were connected to it and what desires did I have typically when I went to unmindful eating. So you see that different colors show emotions. Maybe what color is this? I'm colorblind, by the way.
Brown for emotions.
So what you see is that rushed is 3. What we're looking for is the 3s, not the 1s, or frequency. So it seems as if rushed is an emotion that's associated with unmindful eating, and that's an aha for me. I look at it and say, okay, they're connected. Of course I know it. Even without the analytics, I know it. It's when I'm rushed, then I'm doing unmindful eating. But again, I see many of these associations, and many times the advantage of working in community is if you share this with a friend, many times a friend will notice things about you that you didn't really catch. I'd like to go to desires because I believe that desires drives more, and I can quickly point a 7, which is the need for more energy is a 7 right there. So to feel more energetic, you can just move that, and you see that that was a 7. And success of V2 was a 13, and so I can see that when I'm really driven by that desire, which is success of V2, then the desire is taking over me, it's controlling me, so I'm somewhat disempowered, and then I resort to unmindful eating. Do you see the connection? I find this fascinating, get quite excited about it, and I'm kind of waiting for the day where you have 2 weeks of data and can start getting all kinds of ahas, and then continuing to build on it. So showed you a little bit of the analytics of what you'll get out of it. So what you get is better and better view into yourself, but that's not the only point. You can also do balancing, which we'll get to next week. But before that, let's go and talk about how to create episodes.
Excellent.
So let's stay there for a moment. Under the awareness button, you'll see many views, and there's a calendar view. Let's just swing by that for a moment, and that gives all my episodes in April. Let's go to March, and you'll see all my March episodes are right there. And there are many things, fun things you can do with it in area of introspection. We'll come back to it. Let's go again to awareness and go to the timeline view. This is all my data presented in a timeline view, which is similar to Facebook, which is my last entry is first, and then all my entries are in reverse chronological order. There's a lot of numbers here, and let's take you through an explanation of those. So what we did in your exercise was you did a daily recap. I'm going to do something different here, which is I'm going to do a status check. And it's also called a real-time check. And better start listening in carefully, and because this is going to be one of your exercises. So Kamala Devi is entering, and she's calling this a real-time check-in. And so what she's putting in is a column called what. So any episode you enter, so using this app is all about entering episodes and introspecting about them deeper and deeper. We suggest that the what labels should be short, and they should allow you to come back and search on what's. For example, if you regularly have meetings with your boss and they're disempowering, you can create an episode about that and you can introspect about it. Okay? On any episode, there are 2 things you want to do. One is you want to rate the circumstances. Say, what are the circumstances compared to your regular circumstances? And then, how are you responding to it? Is your response intentional? More importantly, is your response empowered? Right? And if it's disempowered, we encourage you to look at it. There's some schools of thought which say if you have a backache, ignore it, watch TV, or ignore it and do your work. Based on my research and the way I like to face life is I don't like to hide things under the carpet. I don't feel that that's productive because you slide greater and greater into the ditch before you know. So if you have a backache and you need to work, it's better to acknowledge it. And so this is your acknowledgement, right? So two things we're going to do. Let's go ahead and rate the circumstance. And my circumstance right now, it's a real-time check-in. I'm getting to show our team's creation for the first time to 200 people. So circumstances are pretty good. I would rate that a 6. I would have given it a 7 if all of you were already experts. Or I have some apprehensions about how the tool should have been this, it should have been much better, etc. So the circumstances aren't perfect. For example, if we had a mobile version today of the tool, I would be more happy about the circumstance. Yeah, I have a lot of version 1 in myself still. Luckily.
Yeah.
It makes me human. Okay, now let's talk about how to react, what my response to the circumstances. The software is asking me to rate my behavior just like you rated your behavior in your homework on a scale of 1 to 7. But your homework was a daily recap. I'm doing a real-time check-in. How's my behavior right now? And I would give it a 7 because it's totally in line with my intentions. And how my emotions, I would give them maybe a 5. I feel fairly happy, but there are other things, though I'm doing a real-time check-in, I'm here, there are other things that aren't perfect or which I have some anxiety about certain things, etc. If everything was just totally turned on and totally empowered from a feeling sense, then I would give myself a 7.
So I'm hearing that your emotions are sort of an average of the happiness that you feel now and some of the anxiety. You're averaging your overall emotions.
Yes.
Got it. Great.
Yes. And my energy level is a 5.
Great.
And let's give it a 6 because physiologically all is well. There's nothing wrong with me, and it's just that a nap would be great soon. So that makes it not a 7. And desires is one that I focus on, right? And I would say I would still rate my desire as a 4. And you'd ask me why it's not a 7. 7, if I feel that all is completely well, and for example, if this video recording was to fail right now, then I would be as happy if it went on, right? But I'm somewhat attached to delivering this message, right? And I have other desires driving me. So the way I ask is that how rushed do I feel? And I feel a little rushed. There are a whole bunch of to-dos, and every to-do is really an attachment of some kind, right?
Yeah.
And so I am feeling a bit rushed, so I give myself a 4. But as I talk through that, I'm actually feeling a bit better. How about a 5?
Okay, good.
And empathy is something that you would not see in your software. It doesn't come automatically. You can add it by going to settings, and it's one of the muscles that I'm trying to develop, and thus I track it, and you have a choice to track anything like that, and I would give it a 5 right now. Okay, so that's the rating part of an episode. It's a real-time check-in. If that's all you do, I think it's a great benefit. You saw me get benefit from it right now. I'm actually feeling much better having done that. And I depend on this. I'm a little addicted to it. I go to this and I enter things and I feel better. And if this is all you do, you're done. But if you have time, we encourage you to go deeper, particularly if you're called upon to say a little more. If
this was all you do, you save it here.
Great, thanks.
Right? And then that saves it right in line with all the rest.
Right.
But if we want to go deeper, we pushed on the little pencil.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Are we going deeper?
Let's go deeper and just show what there is.
Great.
And there's much more to go deeper. My ratings were shown right there. and I can give many more details of this. Let's avoid that because we will go to this form, which is called an episode editor later. So you can save and close this, and I just wanted to show what's possible.
Yeah, but that's how you access the episode editor from the real time or the timeline.
Right.
Great.
Right. So let's talk about one of your homeworks then would be to create an account. Most of you probably already did because you had the assessment to do as your previous homework. And for some reason, if you didn't, then create an account and go to the timeline view in Awareness, and you have 7 days before we meet again, and for at least 5 days create one status check-in, one real-time check-in. And again, commit to a time you want to do it, because if you leave it to any time, then chances are greater that you'll miss. So leave it to, I want to do a status first thing in the morning. Or afternoons is usually where I'm most disempowered, so I'll do a status check-in there. Give yourself a window, set an alarm to go do it, such that you're doing that. And by the way, the software also has an alarm that you can set, but we're going to give you 2 homeworks. So choose if you want to use the software. By the way, software will have multiple alarms, doesn't have yet. You can set one alarm, so you can go to settings and set yourself a notification such that the software reminds you to come make an episode entry. Now let's go take a look at how to do your next homework. And your next homework will be doing on the app what you already did last week. What you did was a daily recap. Let's learn how to do a daily recap.
Great. Calendar view?
Yeah, let's go to calendar view. And by the way, the real-time check-in also, if you so choose, you can do from a calendar view. Though it's hard for me to remember, I'm going to try to do a daily recap maybe for the 14th of April. The moment I click on 14th of April, you get a Google Calendar-like view. And I can click anywhere, just click anywhere. I can make an entry. For example, I clicked at 10 a.m. and there's an entry for 10 a.m. that's possible. I can also edit that if I want. But let's leave that and let's close out of it because I probably want to go and make a daily entry. So what I showed you was that you can go and make many entries for a day if you want, and if you have time and interest and you want to see how you're behaving in a day at different times, what happened, and at every time you want to rate how you reacted to the circumstance, and you want to go into a deeper description of your ripple, that's a choice you have. In the first week, we're not necessarily recommending that because we don't want to overload you. In the first day, in the first week of using the app, we are recommending what's called as a daily recap. A daily recap can be done. You can see where the mouse is next to all day. You go click there.
Good, and you don't click on all day. You click right on this big spot here. Great.
And we won't dive into it, but if you did click on the time window here, you would see that it's an all-day window.
Great. And
let's create, maybe let's say a daily recap there. You should find a prop because I do that often. And also add temp because I want to delete this episode because it's not real.
Got it.
And so one thing you learned is you can have multiple labels, right? You can say daily recap, and you'll see as you see my entries and mom not well because recently my mom wasn't that well. Luckily she's getting better, and so there are multiple labels that I can use later, so about what that day was about, right?
And this field is all about the what, so that's just labeling the episode.
Exactly.
And then we rate the episode.
Not necessarily in that order. It's your choice. I actually don't.
Okay.
Right.
Daily recap.
So what I do in a daily recap, and maybe let's say woke up later than normal. Next line is exercised, and then I could say typically my days are a lot of conference calls. Conference call 1, and then breakfast, and so on. I won't bore you with the details. So this is like my journal, right? And you can add as much color as you want. And if this is all you did, then you got a replacement for, you got an electronic journal that's searchable, etc. And you need not do anything else, though that's not my recommendation. The real juice comes in doing what we say next. But I do want to make a point about journaling. There's more and more scientific research that says that just writing a daily journal helped a lot of people become happier. We're talking of empowerment here, and I think it applies that you would feel better. And one reason is because I said when things are happening, you have a choice of ignoring them and pushing them in under the carpet, or becoming or building your witness consciousness, building that stronger ability to observe, separating that observer personality from the reactor-actor personality. And again, I want to keep emphasizing this because it's so important to our 90-day journey. That means start thinking of yourself as removing yourself from the actor personality. That's what you're doing when you're doing a daily recap. That's what you're doing when you're doing labeling. That's what you're doing when you do some of the other mindfulness exercises that we'll be rolling out. You're going to the gym. You're building muscles. So whenever you go to V2PAL, you're building that muscle. It's going to the gym, right? And what I encourage you to do is do what I do, which is I make this a meditative practice. I sit down and say, this is a form of meditation, right? I get myself really grounded and I breathe deeper. I connect to my anchor. I many times label as I go through this, and I find it very therapeutic. Let's go to behaviors, and how about I actually drive this part, because I can actually click out of, I can say mindlessly checking email instead of being present, and I can rate this as empowering or disempowering, and I put a thumbs down there. Then I can go to my next one, and I could say not completing one task before switching to another, and I can say that was disempowering too. And I can say being mindful. So mindful journaling, yes. And so that I can leave as a positive. This, by the way, was a mistake. I can cancel out of it. You'll get a lot of it if you were in the middle of we have to clean this up in the software. If you get entries that you didn't intend, just cancel out of them. So those were my behaviors, and I can go to emotions, and I can pick frustrated. This happens to me often. Does it happen to you, where it's frustrated by difficulty in communicating, and where being understood is fairly important to me, and if you're not understanding what I'm saying, you're really disempowering me now. So, and I can put grateful, which I am feeling right now, though this is not a real-time check-in, right? It's really about that day. But I can search, and I could say I was grateful for food, house, health, peace, or just say grateful. And this was a positive or empowering. Let's not use the term positive and negative. Empowering and disempowering, I think, makes more sense in our journey. So this was empowering, yes, and this was disempowering. And guess what? Yes. At least I know about it. At least I'm aware of it. And at least I'm building this awareness or witnessing consciousness. Okay? So I won't bore you with the details of, we can go do that for desires. And this is a homework that you've already been doing, so I'll go and save it. And once I save it, it appeared right here. It was the daily recap, etc. Sorry, I forgot to do the ratings, but I can go do the ratings. But you see, my journal comes up here. My behaviors come up here, emotions. I didn't enter other things, so they'll come up, but now I'm going to go back to this. by clicking there because I didn't do my ratings. Again, for sake of time, I won't do the ratings. Or let's do them fast. What was my mood? I'll give it a 4. What was my physiology? I'll give it a 5. My desires, I'll give them a 4. I do empathy, I don't remember, so I'll give it a 4. Okay. So again, by the way, let me show you. I could do desires, and concept of beliefs, we haven't really taught you that. We'll be teaching you much more about beliefs. But those of you who are used to introspection teachings and know how to get to underlying beliefs that are driving behaviors, whether they're helpful beliefs or unhelpful beliefs, feel free to start using that column. Then there's a column that I added. I don't know, is it in the software? Does the next intention come as part of the software, or did I add that?
I think, yeah, that's a personalized setting that you added.
Yeah, I add you can add personalized. This is one that I recommend, next intentions. They're more useful when you're doing a real-time check-in. When I'm doing a daily recap, they're not as useful. Okay? So that was a daily recap, and your homework then is to continue your daily recap practice that you were doing on paper, and you can start using the computer. Now, if you're so inclined, you can use your paper entries and enter them as previous daily recaps. That way you have a 1-week head start on your analytics. Okay? But again, there's no hurry. Just start today, and as you move forward, you'll get plenty of analytics. Anything I missed, Kamala Devi?
This is wonderful. When doing the episode editor, it becomes clear that in repetition, what we're developing is those the emotional intelligence, the intelligence of what your desires are and what you want. So not only is it increasing the awareness, but it's also increasing the internal fortitude to understand what's going on for you. And that's, part of how we're building self-empathy and self-connection.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Are you doing belly rising, belly falling?
I will now. Good reminder. Yeah.
What I want to do is show you a few other uses of the software. Or the app will be doing it much more later, but doesn't really involve your homeworks. So let's go back to awareness. And in awareness, there's several views. There's the calendar view. What I'd like to do is show you the journal view. And the journal view is kind of the opposite of a timeline view, where you put a start date, and you can put any start date, and you see everything that happened on that Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, so you can read it like a journal. One of the things you're seeing here is that I happen to record my dreams first thing in the morning. And so you can, like I said, one of the episodes you can create is meetings with your boss, or anything that's special to you. And dreams is one of the whats that I always answer, and my hope is that one day they'll have this dream analysis software that'll read all my episodes and then give me just tremendous insight into myself.
I love your vision.
And if others don't do it, we'll do it. So then I can read. There's an expand all view. If I do the expand all, then you can start reading your journal. You can see exactly what your behaviors, desires, and next intentions were. And then I can track my next intentions. Did I follow through in a further entry? Okay. Now I want to take you through the software a little more, and let's go to this thing called graphs. So these are my circumstances. The fours are all out here. There are 258 fours. Those are my average circumstances. These are the times circumstances were better than usual, and these are the times they were not as good as usual. Right?
And I want to point out, because you've been using it so frequently, you're looking at 300 or so episodes, And a new beginner with the software is not going to have any data to analyze. So graphs are only useful 2 or 4 weeks from now after you've been recording your data.
Right. So those were my circumstances. This is my response. So again, I'm looking at actions, and I can look at how many more empowered behaviors did I have and how many less empowered behaviors did I have. If I want to search any of these, for example, I can click here and it'll take me to all the times I clicked on trees. And if it's now, if you notice in behaviors, all my trees came up, and I can see them in a timeline view, or I can see them in a calendar view. You'll see this calendar view to be less sparse, but it's every time I had a tree as an entry, and I can see if there's a pattern. Mm-hmm. Did it happen more on weekends? Did it happen more on weekdays, etc.? Some people have benefited a lot from it, and over time you'll start seeing patterns emerge. Nice. If you want to read more about your behaviors where it was 3, you can go to a journal view, and you can pick a start date, maybe at the beginning of April, and then I can see all the episodes. There were only 3 episodes where I had trees, and I can look at what was really happening. And so that's another way of, and there are many search capabilities. For example, let me go to timeline view. Many times when you're loading, it comes up slowly, so I've reloaded it, and still all my episodes aren't loaded. But what I want to show you is this button, which allows you to do a greater amount of searches. I won't go into that. I'll let you play with that. It'll allow you to do more searches, right? It's very obvious when you start looking at it, at least for me, because I've been looking at it for many months. You can look at and search for emotions in a certain range, or desires in a certain range, or a combination of emotions and desires in certain ranges. Okay, so hopefully the homeworks are really clear to you and you're dying to just go do those, right? And I want to add a little more homework, because as I said, we want to balance this awareness muscle with what you do on the app, which is a little more introspective, and then without the app, which is sitting down and continuing to build that observation muscle. Last week you did the labeling exercise. Now we'll take the labeling exercise to another domain, one where mindfulness is actually very, very central, and it's the area of eating. And we will give you a link to an exercise called mindful eating. It's one of my favorite exercises. I love it. I don't do it enough, like you saw in my analytics. But all the same, I do it more than I used to, and I really enjoy doing it. As you look at that exercise, you'll see that the point behind that exercise is continuing to build this witness consciousness and continuing to choose behaviors. So as you progress, you'll see that there's much more instruction in this mindful eating exercise to really decouple the need and desire to do something versus doing it. So hope you enjoy that. We'll look forward to a conversation with you on Facebook, your experience with it, or questions on it. So exercise then will be watching that tape and doing one exercise of mindful eating with the tape, and where you'll get your food, sit down with the tape and follow the instructions on the tape. And the optional exercise, if you have the time, is to do mindful eating one more time during the week. So that concludes the exercises, and I feel that this is a time to kind of wrap up, but I have one more message relative to what's probably happening with the people on the 90-day journey, is resistance. Do you get resistance to stuff?
I sure do. Yeah, it's a lot of learning curve. There's new stuff. It's hard to make change initially.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about resistance, and a lot of what we'll teach you in the 90 days is how to overcome resistance, right? How to be empowered despite circumstances. But to do that, you need to show up to the gym. And how do you really show up to the gym for 90 days? And so it's a chicken and egg, and that's why we're asking people to dive a little deeper for the 90 days, because it can be transformative, and these 90 days will leave you with, I think, skills that you could use anytime in your life, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, right? But you've got to show up to the gym. So the analogy I have always in my mind is one of learning how to swim or learning how to ride the bike. You show up, you're enthusiastic about riding the bike, and you fall down and you hurt your knees. So your resistance actually builds. So as you go through some of these exercises, they're not as much fun maybe to some of you as watching TV or being on Facebook, right? On the other hand, they have just long-term benefits. It is like learning to swim or learning to ride the bike. So sticking with it is important. And as you're having resistances, let's discuss them on Facebook. We'll have several suggestions on how to overcome the resistances. And let's continue the dialogue. But keep in mind, the resistances will come up. And when the resistance comes up, I want to share one trick with you, which is, again, take 2 breaths. And guess what? Label. Say, feeling resistance for this and this, and that's probably going to give you a little more energy. That's trick number 1. The trick number 2 is, I'm going to do this for the next 5 minutes. Shrink the task, make it maybe just 2 minutes. If you want to do mindful eating and doing it for 5 minutes is hard, do it for 2 minutes. Shrink the change to a very meaningful time, and then say, for the next 2 minutes, nothing is more important than either making a daily recap happen, doing a real-time check-in, or doing mindful eating. Leave you with that, and look forward to seeing you next week and interacting with you on Facebook, on our community page in the meantime.
Thank you.
Any things to add?
I think that's great. I especially love, since this is so high tech, that the mindful eating meditation is so high touch, and I can't wait to hear what you think of this very sensual exercise that Sanjiv leads us through. It's really life-changing for me. So thank you.
Thank you so much.